foolishness in that situation. When he's on the road, that's where everybody moves from one place to another. But even then, in other words, you can't fake wisdom. You can't show who he is in those situations as well.
Yep, for sure. Anybody else? Jordan?
I thought it made me think of just everyday life. The fools show themselves in everyday life, whether it's driving or whether you're, at the store or whatever, and you see somebody pop off or say something crazy or just foolish. It's just during everyday life they show what's in their heart just by their actions in public.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of.
Yeah. Anybody else? Now that's a good point. And again, that kind of loops it back to the first verse, doesn't it? When you think about that, like Jordan says, your actions. What are your actions telling others about you? And that's an important thing for us to think about as we're living our life and making sure that we're led by wisdom. Anybody else? First, all right. Then verse 4. If the anger of the ruler rises against you, do not leave your place, for calmness will lay great offenses to rest. But what's the wisdom here?
Don't overreact.
Don't overreact, buddy.
I see several things in this particular verse. Like when Jesus was on trial, he was calm. He didn't speak back. But also, there's a verse, and I should have looked it up, but don't listen to everything that you hear because your slave might be talking about you.
Yeah. We'll get to that, the last verse of this chapter. Yeah, so.
Emotional maturity.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have emotional maturity.
You think there's any particular application here with it talking about the ruler? Go ahead.
Anyone in authority. Don't be hasty to overreact to someone in authority.
Yeah. Why? Why would that be important?
Not going to do you good.
Yeah. And, if we put this in context of a ruler or a person in authority, if something is going on and they're mad at you, first of all, what do they have the power to do? It could be to your detriment, right? Especially in the context of kings and things like that, they could put you to death. So in you're dealing with this in calmness, as it says, lay great offenses to rest. And the way we react, especially to someone that's in authority that we're dealing with. In our context, it's going to be more like a boss or something like that. But wisdom would tell us to think twice before we react to something like that, right? To make sure that we consider what we say and how we handle a situation if we're put in where maybe we are at odds with someone that has authority over us. Go ahead, Rodney.
It's interesting. The King James translation that we have here is different. And the idea, again, I see is, people in power sometimes criticize us. Do you give up and walk away from your place, your post? Or do you show them, ours says calmness, this says calmness, this says conciliation. It is reached by, keeping
on. In fact, I was going to bring it up. One of the other versions says, "Don't quit."
Yeah,
which is what I thought was an interesting. It sounds like that's where the King James leans to that, as well as remaining calm. Like you said, stay at your post, right? Keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. Do it with calmness, and kind of let the what's going on work itself out. Right? It is another way to look at this verse. Go ahead, Daryl.
The proverb says a gentle answer turns away wrath.
Yeah. Good point. Anybody else? All right. Verse 5. Sorry, my pages are sticking together. There's an evil that I've seen under the sun, as it were an error proceeding from a ruler. Folly is set at many high places, and the rich in a low place. I've seen slaves on horses and princes walking on the ground like slaves. So I think another verse that I read talked about there's an evil where the rulers made a grave mistake. is the way it's worded. And the picture I see here, I see what you guys can comment, see what you think, is that a ruler is making an error by putting the wrong people in the wrong position. And I think that politically we could argue that a lot probably sometimes. Why did that person get appointed into that role, or things like that, or even for us that are into sports, is why did the athletic director hire that person to be the coach, or whatever. We think about those things, but it's a fact, isn't it? And again, we think about what wisdom is teaching us. Is that this is something that we're going to have to deal with at times, isn't it? That there's going to be people who get put into positions that they ain't got any business being in. It happens at work, it happens in politics, it happens in sports, or wherever. And it kind of comes back to some of the paradoxes we talked about last week. Even individually, do we always get what we deserve? Do we always get the promotion that we feel like we deserve? Ever had anybody promoted instead of you for maybe other reasons other than job performance? I mean, where I work, that happens. There's other reasons that people get put into positions other than their performance, which then it can discourage you, right? That's something to be careful of getting discouraged, because maybe it was not you that got chosen, but somebody else. But just because you didn't get chosen, back kind of the previous verse with your boss, does that give you the right to quit? To then not do your job? Well, they didn't promote me, and I'm just not going to do my job well anymore. Well, of course not. That's not going to get us anywhere. Either. But it's just interesting that the preacher points out here, and when we're viewing the world from a wise point of view, that you're going to see this, and this is real, and it's going to happen. Back to, again, last couple of weeks, we established already that life isn't fair, didn't we? And this, to me, this verse is another example of where we might see this, but in this case, it's showing us that whoever did this was at error, right? As if it were evil error, like I said, one said, made a grave mistake in appointing these people. Another word I found when studying this, it talked about this verse, it said that life can feel inverted. I thought that was an interesting perspective when I never thought about it that way, of thinking of life is inverted in the sense that people are in positions they ought not be in, and maybe you're not in the position you should be in. So, what do you guys think? I kind of talked a lot on that one. No thoughts? Go ahead.
Well, if we're just talking about like in businesses and stuff, and if somebody gets promoted over you, but how we act or react to that is a reflection of us as a Christian. And so there's a part like do all things to the glory of God, and if we do that, and they should know we're a Christian if we're working with people. If they don't know, then we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so that's not just a reflection on us, that's a reflection on being a Christian. Yeah,
good point. I mean, that kind of pulls back to verse 1 too, right? About how you react to something. That one snap off about that could hurt you professionally as well as your influence as a Christian. Good point. Anybody else? All right. We're on to verse 8. He who digs a pit will fall into it, and a serpent will bite him who breaks through a wall. He who quarries stone is hurt by them, and who splits logs is endangered by them. What's wisdom teaching us here?
Unintended consequences.
Yeah, unintended consequences. Yeah, I wasn't sure when I read through this if this was connected back to foolish actions or not. It doesn't necessarily sound like it, right? You definitely could be foolish when you're doing these things, right? I don't know, any of y'all that's worked in plant environments, well, at least with what's the number one initiative? Safety, right? And that is in our work. Safety comes first. And what do you think is one of the things we're always trying to remind people about being safe? Planning. Don't be foolish, right? In this whole we have, if anybody's worked around electrical stuff, we have, or equipment, we have this stuff called lockout, tagout. which means before you get in there and work on that thing, what do you make sure of? The power's off, and there's no way this thing can start with you in the middle of it, right? And if you don't, you're setting yourself up for an accident. And so again, back to wisdom. What does wisdom tell us in our everyday work that we're doing? It's to be prepared. Think carefully about what we're doing, because even the most mediocre things can carry risk, don't it? I mean, we can walk out the parking lot and trip over a crack in the asphalt and break an ankle. That doesn't necessarily mean we were foolish in doing that, but it says that we need to be prepared and prepare ourselves for what we're working on. And so wisdom would tell us to be aware of those kind of dangers, right? To be aware of what's going on. Again, when it comes to the safety thing, the couple of big things that we always teach people is, before you act, use your eyes. Look before you stick your hand in something, or those kind of things. And is that complicated? Not at all, but it's typically it's the simple things where people get hurt. The ones that are really dangerous. Well, why do you think less people get hurt doing really dangerous stuff than just your kind of mundane stuff? Yeah, if you're dealing with some huge, 240 kind of electrical stuff, you know what can happen if you mess that up, right? So you're more conscious of it. But if you're just climbing a ladder to maybe change something, and you're out here, like this kind of thing, yeah, you don't think as much, do you? And I almost fell over doing it there. So you can hurt yourself in easy ways. This is just kind of a basic good wisdom nugget for our lives and how we live them. And just slow down, think about what you're doing, and try to keep yourself from getting hurt. It's been, for those of us that have gotten a little older, it sure takes longer for it to heal up than it used to. So, it has all kinds of negatives if you do something stupid and get yourself hurt. So, anybody have any other comments on this one?
Something I read linked the breaking through a wall to breaking through a boundary.
Okay. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
They're there for your protection.
That's a good one. I didn't think about that. That's a really good point. It's kind of the lockout, tag out kind of thing for that in it. Or light. We put up on machinery. We have light curtains, right? With the point being, if you stick your hand through the light curtain, it stops, right, to keep you from getting hurt. That's a good point. That there are boundaries that we need to make sure that we honor in our lives to keep ourselves safe. Good point, buddy.
I was just reading. This references Amos 5:19, and it says, "As if a man fled from a lion and the bear met him, or went into the house and leaned his hand against the wall and a serpent bit him."
That sounds like just bad luck there. On that one, yes. Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Verses 10 and 11. If the iron is blunt and one does not sharpen the edge, he must use more strength, but wisdom helps one to succeed. So I use one word to describe this verse. What's your word? Mine was preparation. What's the point with the axe or iron or whatever? Sharpen it first, right? If you sharpen the axe before you go chop wood, is it going to make your job easier? Yeah. So I mean, this is a preparation verse. But for us to prepare, it shows the importance of preparation and skill. And another thing we always think too with preparation, a little time spent up front can save a lot of time down the road, can't it? Or in my world, we also talk about, that design it right to start with, or design it right the first time, and you're going to have a lot less trouble down the road, because it costs a lot less to change it while it's still on a piece of paper than it is when something's out in production. Right? So do, think about things and prepare. Go ahead, Danny.
So I will say you started it like turkeys. But you take things that people don't like and don't want to do and all that kind of stuff. But risk assessment, assessing risk is all over this stuff, right? Take time to understand what's the likely risks of what you're doing, and those are important to be front and center in your mind.
Good point. And can we make a spiritual application of that? Well, absolutely, right? Of thinking of what's the risk spiritually of this behavior or this action that I'm about to engage in. Then verse 11, if the serpent bites before it is charmed, there is no advantage to the charmer. So if the first verse is about preparation, what's the second one about?
Watchfulness.
Watchfulness. Wasn't the word I had, but that works. I said timing. Right? If you're going to want the snake, the charming to work, then you need to do it before you mess with it too much. Don't in this case, or train the dog or train the lion before you jump in the cage with it. If you're in the circus or something, that there's a timing, so that wisdom would also teach us that not only do we need to prepare and do the right thing, that at times timing can be very important as well. Right? That when we need to do things in the right time, we need to be able to make decisions of when we should act and maybe when we should wait on what we're doing. And I think these are just good little nuggets that they're coming back to the last couple of verses and this one. It really is getting at that wisdom teaching us just to kind of step back and think about things before you just jump into doing something. Whether it's preparing, whether it's the timing of something, it might planning a golf trip with your buddies on your anniversary might not be the wisest timing plans, right? So nothing wrong with a golf trip with your buddies, but maybe that's not the right time for it. And wisdom would help us to understand and think about those kind of things. Anybody else have any comments on these, Daryl?
Another person puts that in the term of like, it says, if the snake bites you before you charm it, what's the use of being a snake charmer?
Yeah. And you're not a very good one, are you? anyway, so and maybe wisdom would say, why would you want to mess with a snake to start with? That would be my thoughts on that one. But anyway, all right, verses 12 to 15 here. We'll start with verse 12. The words of a wise man's mouth win in favor, but the lips of a fool consume him. Yeah, again, I think we've talked about this several times, but are words important? Absolutely, and because obviously that's the way that the majority of the way that we communicate is through words, and either of those words can win us favor, or in the case that it says here, it can consume him, or another version I read said that fools are destroyed by their own words. So the principle being that we can build ourselves up, or we can drag ourselves down by the words that we speak that come out of our mouth, and especially back to the beginning, if we're letting out rash, foolish things. The influence that can have, how that can ruin our influence with others. And then we continue in 13. The beginning of the words of his mouth, this is talking about the fool, is foolishness, and the end of his talk is evil madness. A fool multiplies words, though no man knows what is to be, and who can tell him what will be after him. The toil of a fool wearies him, for he does not know the way to the city. I think all of us have. Hopefully we hadn't done it, but we've known people that this description just fits, right? That all they do is talk, and what do we? You ever done this? What does that mean? Blah 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 blah. There's some people that just talk, and their words mean nothing. When it talks about the end. The end of the talk is evil madness. That's kind of strong, but I guess that's true. And the multiplying of words, but in the end, can he really tell what's going to happen? No, he just talks too much. Jason, were you? I saw your hand. So, so when we think about this in terms of ourself, this is just wisdom of wise versus foolish speech, isn't it? And there's one verse that I thought about in it's Ephesians 4:29. It says, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building up. As it fits the occasion, it might give grace to those who hear." And to me, that's a verse that we really need to consider. And let me give you an example. And this is a true example that I witnessed in an auditorium. So somebody came in, somebody was going through a sickness. And they had it announced. And this older lady walks up to him and says, "My mama had that. She suffered. Oh, she suffered. It was awful. I hope things work out for you." Now, that's not quite word for word, but that's pretty close. And I mean, did that build up? What was that? Was that a lie? No, it wasn't a lie. But maybe something would be more appropriate would be something. Well, my mother experienced that. I can empathize with you. I'll be praying for you. Would that not come across a lot better than, "Oh, man, she suffered and suffered and suffered some more"? But it's just a thought that we need to think about our words, right, and not come across as a fool in the things that we're saying, and think about how they affect others that we're dealing with. And then verse 15 there. That it's kind of like the toil of the fool wearies him, for he does not know the way of the city. It's kind of like he don't know his way home. It's kind of like the toil wearies him. He don't even know how to get back to his house. And when we think about toil wearying us, why is that foolish? Well, why is the toil of a fool? But if we connect it to the previous verses, what's it kind of telling us? It's getting back to these foolish actions, foolish words. Danny?
I was going to say, when I think of these things, it feels like there's a lot of words because it's short-sighted enough where not too long in the conversation they're going to argue with themselves.
There you go.
That they're canceling things out, so they're trying to justify, and you end up wandering all over the place and not anywhere, right? And that's what.
They're wishy-washy. That'd be the word I'd use for it. Good point. Anybody else?
Or useless words can lead to useless deeds.
That's a good point. Absolutely.
What they say and then what they do correspond.
Rodney, you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say something about verse 14.
Oh, go ahead.
But after reading it, I figured I probably should.
There you go. All right, my clicker's not. Go ahead, buddy.
It seems like there's a preoccupation on things that are not the goal, that are keeping you from the goal.
That's a good thing. Good point. Yeah. All right, in verse 16. Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child and your princes feast in the morning. Happy are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobility and your princes feast at the proper time for strength and not for drunkenness. What was this talking about?
You need experience in leadership.
Yeah, good leadership is what this one is talking about. When I've always heard it said that an organization takes on the characteristics of its leader. Yeah, you ever experienced that in business? And to our elders, that's something that can happen in a church as well, right? The church will take on the characteristics of their leadership. So it's important to have leadership that's sound, as Tom said, and that they understand. Kind of that verse 17, getting at timing again. It's kind of making the contrast of well, why are they feasting? Are they feasting to strengthen? Which might say they're preparing for war or preparing for something versus just getting drunk, right? Which would indicate wasting time, right? For doing things that are not appropriate or anything that's going to help their land as they go to to lead it. And, you know, obviously, we need to think about applying this to our own lives, right? We're all in some sort of leadership role, whether it's as a parent, as a husband, you know, even in younger folks, the influence that we have on others, and just keeping ourselves grounded in being wise in the way others see us and the way we lead. Because sometimes we lead and don't realize we're leading, don't we? And we sure don't want to, you know, that our influence can be one of, as John pointed out earlier, you know, when people are watching us and if they know you're a Christian, it's like, well, they're a Christian, but they're still doing that, or they're still behaving that way. Well, I guess it's okay for me to do that too then, right? So we can, or just the opposite. If somebody says, well, they didn't participate in this activity. Yeah, both of those are leading, aren't they? That we're leading one way or the other, and we need to be mindful of how we're leading others. And then as more of as a citizen side of things, we do have a responsibility to support our wise leadership, right? Or to support our leadership, to pray for our leaders and things like that. So, anybody else have any comments on these? All right. Verse 18. Through sloth the roof sinks in, and through indolence the house leaks. What's your word for this one? Lazy. Laziness. You know, what do we? What's the sloth analogy here? Has anybody ever seen a sloth at the zoo or somewhere? How do they behave? You know, you've seen the cartoons of them. It's like they're in slow motion, right? Their actions look like that they're in slow motions. But what does indolence mean? Does anybody other versions say there? Idleness. Anybody got anything? I'm sorry. Slackness. Yeah. What's the point with that one? Yeah. It's you know, you see that there's a leak, there's this, the door's falling off the hinges, whatever, and it's like no urgency, right? And again, coming back to how do we make spiritual application of that? Rodney?
Anything of real value, relationship with God, relationship with a brethren, husband, wife, takes work. You know, when there's a house that you live in, however metaphorically you see that, if you don't work on that, it will leak, it'll break down. And so just a kind of sliding through things isn't going to get the job done.
Yeah, for those of us that are engineers, we always want to talk about the second law of thermodynamics, right? So, but what's the second law of thermo say for those that are? It says that everything goes where, Danny? To pot. Yeah, that's exactly what it says. That the universe or whatever tends to disorder, right? When you drop the puzzle on the floor, does it put itself together? No, it scatters, right? And to Rodney's point, it's like that we have to work to establish the order. It requires work. To do that, and it requires the thoughtfulness to plan. Yeah, the other word I thought that came here, and I'm struggling. I'll admit I'm struggling with this. This is a time of year at work we have to do year-end reviews. And as a manager, I have to write them up. And, you know, I look at my deadline, and I'm like, okay, if a deadline is Friday, Wednesday afternoon, that's a good time to start. You know, the procrastination, right? Try not to procrastinate, because that can definitely lead to indolence and laziness, isn't it? That we can. Now, some people work better under pressure, so they like to, you know, they wait close to the deadline because they work better under pressure. But you know, in general, it's probably better to try to get things done and not wait to the last minute. So, all right, verse 19. Bread is made for laughter, wine gladdens life, and money answers everything. So is this a wise viewpoint or is this a foolish viewpoint in this verse? Do what?
Yes.
Yes. Everybody agree? Yeah, that's when I read it, I was like, was he trying to be sarcastic here? Or, what's the point? But it is. It actually is yes, right? We talked about this many times that what has he told us to do with our bread? Enjoy it, right? To enjoy time with your family, your food, and we've been told to toil. And to enjoy the fruits of that toil, so that that's money, so that there's nothing wrong with it. But where's the problem? Excess, exactly. If this is the focus, then all of a sudden we've gone from wisdom to foolishness, haven't we? If our focus is only on laughter, getting drunk, and trying to make money so that we can have stuff. That we flipped from acting in a wise way to acting in a foolish way. And then finally in verse 20, even in your thoughts do not curse the king, nor in your bedroom curse the rich, for a bird of the air will carry your voice, and some winged creature tell the matter. What's wisdom teaching us here?
Watch what you say.
Yeah, watch what you say, even when. Anytime, even when you don't think that somebody can hear what you're saying. All right, has anybody ever watched that show, Undercover Boss? Yeah. I was kind of thought about that here. The people that are running their boss down while their boss is standing there with them, and they have no clue who they are. But the point is that to be mindful again of our words. We've seen plenty of that, and I think there's also a respect for authority thing that's being alluded to here as well, don't you? When you think about not cursing, it says the rich, but or those that are in authority, that the king or the rich, that we have a responsibility to guard our words. And think about what we're saying about our leaders. I know at times it's awful easy, right, to get on the train of running down the president or the Congress or whoever. But we need to think about those things because again of our influence, and because for us, who's in control? God, right? And our focus should be on God, and that's where wisdom would lead us. And just to understand that careless speech can lead us into trouble. All right, anybody last parting comments? We're out of time. Go ahead, John.
Well, I think it's more than just our speech, because it's saying in our thoughts, do not curse the king. So God knows our thoughts and our heart.
Yeah, good point. Keep our thoughts clean as well as our words. All right, well, thanks, everybody. And we'll pick up with chapter 11 next week.